The 49ers just drafted Florida wide receiver Ricky Pearsall with pick number 31. So there's been rumors that Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk are on the trade block. The Patriots need a wide receiver. If you're the Patriots, what's next here? What should they do at 34? Do they dangle 34 for Brandon Aiyuk? Do they stick and pick a wide receiver? Because A.D. Mitchell's on the board. Lad McConkey's on the board. Keon Coleman's on the board. Do they shift the focus to tackle? Do they wait with wide receiver after reports that KJ Osborne has had a good camp so far? Like, where do you see this team going? What's your opinion? What do they do? Because before we came on air, I'm kind of ranting here, but before we came on air, we said they can do a ton here. Like, there's a lot of different options here. And even though they have just 34 and 68 tomorrow, or today, if this is when you're watching this, what's the plan? What should they do in Taylor Kyle's opinion?
So I think the top priority should be trying to get Brandon Aiyuk. And Ian Rappaport actually mentioned right when the Ricky Pearsall, right before the Ricky Pearsall pick, I think was confirmed, he mentioned that the Commanders or the Patriots, he specifically named them, could try to package their second-round picks, but the Patriots have the second-round pick after the Bills now. The Bills now have the first one. But they can package that and maybe like a late-round pick or two for Brandon Aiyuk, which I think, like, if you can do that, hell yes. Because I don't think any of the receivers that are left in this receiver class period are ever going to touch Brandon Aiyuk. Like, A.D. Mitchell has the talent, but he fell out of the first round. I think that says a lot about what teams think about him. One, even if it's not, a character thing or an effort thing or whatever, it's the consistency where it's like, why wasn't he more productive in college with all this talent? Like, yeah, there was a lot of talent around him, but also it still doesn't make sense. Like, you're talking after the catch, like consistency, it just wasn't there. And Brandon Aiyuk, we already know, is a top 10. Honestly, if you look at the numbers, he's like a top 5 receiver. Earlier, we said that. I said that he was better than AJ Brown, and then I kind of backtracked because I was mostly joking and said that they're just different. I actually looked at the numbers. He was better statistically than AJ Brown, which I'm a film guy, so I don't like to just go by numbers. I think that's silly. But I do think that you could just say, yeah, they're different flavors, but they're both dominant wide receivers in their own different ways. So I do think that Aiyuk should be the priority. That said, that's because I'll look at the receivers that are left. Lad McConkey.
Before we get to them, it's Brandon Aiyuk, and I just the only reason I want to get in here because I've been on Team Aiyuk for this team for a long time. I think it makes. I don't want to say it makes too much sense, but it kind of does. Like, there's this recipe, and I kind of sound like a broken record when I do this, but there's this recipe for young talented quarterbacks where whether they're a rookie or a second year, you go and bring in that veteran pass catcher who can be that blanket, that security binky, whatever you want to call it, and help you get through the rookie's ups and downs and the fact that, you might struggle. And there's just this guy that you can go throw it to. Like, you look at freaking Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to be CJ Stroud with Stephon Diggs. They did it with AJ Brown in Philly. They did it with Tua Tagovailoa in Miami with Tyreek Hill. Like, it's just, and they have all this money to spend, and not all this money to spend because, there's the back and forth on do they spend the money or whatever. And they got to that threshold. They cut that cap space that they had in half, but they still have plenty of it. They can go get Brandon Aiyuk. He's a guy who can come in here and help rejuvenate this team. And Taylor, I'm going to steal something you told me just before we came on here. Drake Maye is the most talented quarterback Brandon Aiyuk has played with in the NFL. He was there with Jimmy G. He was there with Brock Purdy. He put up 1,400 yards with Brock Purdy last year. Imagine what he can do with Drake Maye when he hits his ceiling. Like, come on. It's too obvious. They need that guy. They need the guy on the outside. You asked the 3x1 question, or you asked the question to Elliott Wolf, and then he mentioned the 3x1 stuff with an X receiver who can split out wide and just beat guys one-on-one. That's Brandon Aiyuk. Yep. And when I say it's that simple of an idea. It's not going to be that easy for them to go get him. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they're stupid for not getting him if it doesn't happen, because I believe they're going to try. Tom Curran reported that there's the framework set up for an Aiyuk trade. You just mentioned, Ian Rappaport mentioned that, those are two teams that could go try and get Aiyuk. So I believe they're going to try. And if they swing and miss, we'll see what happens. But it would really, really, really help this team, Drake Maye, the idea around the wide receiver room, and just that offense that Alex Van Pelt's going to want to run in general if they can get Brandon Aiyuk here.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting about the Commanders and the Patriots specifically in this race, Brandon Aiyuk has connections with somebody on both teams.
Mm-hmm.
He caught passes from Jaden Daniels in college. Now, this was a lesser version of Jaden Daniels, but I think Josina Anderson said that they're live right now together. Jaden Daniels and Brandon Aiyuk are on live together. So,
oh boy.
Yeah, that's not a great sign. But also, Kendrick Bourne and Brandon Aiyuk are friends, and Kendrick Bourne has been campaigning for Brandon Aiyuk to come to the Patriots. Now, the Patriots have the second pick in the second round, higher capital, but at the same time, the Commanders are only 2 picks away.
Right.
And with Brandon Aiyuk and John Lynch, I think he's going to want to help, especially if it's that close. Unless the Patriots just straight up outbid the Commanders, I think that John Lynch is going to be like, hey, is there somewhere you really want to go? Because a lot of the time, these teams tried, especially for veteran players who've done a lot for the team, they try to give them some say in where they end up going. So honestly, unless it becomes a real bidding war, I don't really know how great the Patriots' chances are if, Aiyuk really does want to just reunite with Jaden Daniels. So it may not even be in the Patriots' hands. But, I was saying, like you talked about the X receiver question, looking at the receivers available and why I think, even though I'll talk about the tackles in a second, I do think that's an area of concern. But looking at the receivers left, Lad McConkey, really good player. We talked about it. He's not an X. A.D. Mitchell is an X, but on this rebuilding team where you're trying to establish a culture, do you want to take a chance on a guy who might not be consistent, may not have the work ethic that you're looking for, and maybe you have to kind of supercharge him? Some of that comes down to coaching, but do you want to take that on? Who knows? Keon Coleman, I don't think he's really a prototypical X. I think he's a ball winner. I think he's way better than people give him credit for. I'm sure the chat's going to love that I brought him up. But he's not Aiyuk by any stretch of the imagination. And I also, frankly, would rather trade back if he was somebody they wanted to target than Roman Wilson. Not an X. I don't think he's a good fit on this team. Troy Franklin is someone they did have for a 30 visit, someone who has experience at X, but also has that same Tyquan Thornton
just
profile.
Gives me Tyquan vibes. I just got chills thinking about Troy Franklin.
He's a better route runner. I think he's got more wiggling. He's better after the catch, but he is undersized. He's got small hands. Like, it's the things about Tyquan that scare you. And then Malachi Corley, who obviously is not an X either. Those are the guys that are probably going to get taken tomorrow. Now, I love Javon Baker, so that's my third round guy where I think he's super talented and can be an X, although he's just got those inconsistencies that he's got to work out. So Aiyuk is the best receiver that you're probably going to get early, like relative to the early round 2 guys. Now, if you do trade for Aiyuk and you miss out on the tackles that are available, and the top tackles left are Patrick Paul, who thought he was going to go in the first round and might be somebody who starts within his first season, Kingsley Suamataia, who I've been saying I hope that's who the Patriots end up getting, where in that sense, I think it's kind of a win-win, to be honest, because you get Brandon Aiyuk and you get your bona fide alpha receiver that makes your whole offense look completely different. Or you can get Patrick Paul or Kingsley Suamataia, who are very good tackles, like guys who have very high upsides and could be potential Pro Bowlers if you can maximize their talent, which you hope happens with Scott Peters, because he learned from Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history. So those options really aren't bad. Especially if maybe you can get a trade back, get some more picks, and then get them. But then Brandon Coleman, who is a bigger guy, I think he could still play left tackle. But and then Roger Rosengarten, who's undersized, probably can't really play his first season unless it's more of a swing tackle role. Sure. But I think he's got a high upside as well as a left tackle, and could also play either side of the line. He played right tackle, but it was for Michael Penix Jr., who's a lefty. So he was a blindside protector, and I think he can do both. So if you don't get those guys, though, then things get a little bit more complicated, because then you're banking on either Kieran Amegaji out of Yale, who's got a super high ceiling. He's super talented, but he came from Yale. And there's going to be some development that needs to happen, similar to Kingsley, where you might need to let him take a redshirt season, which you could argue, like, I think Kingsley has a higher ceiling. Also, he was a captain, which I really love in those bloodlines. Like, I'm sorry, that's very exciting. Like, he's got a family of freak athletes. So they're kind of in a similar boat. And then after him, who's the other one? I literally tweeted about it. It's Kingsley, and then it is Blake Fisher, who I think really is more of a right tackle. So if you do get Aiyuk, which I'm all for, your offensive tackle options honestly aren't fantastic. Now, obviously, all these are developmental guys, so if they do like Kieran Amegaji, that's awesome. I don't think they've shown any interest in him, though. I don't think they had him for a visit or combine.
that I can recall.
I don't think any meeting was reported. So that's my one concern is maybe if you love Javon Foster, if you love Travis Glover and think they have legitimate starting potential, which I think they need to prove. I think they're talented, but there's also some issues where like Foster's footwork isn't super quick. And the same with Javon. I'm sorry, it's so late. The same with Glover, where he really is more patient and wins with his length and compensates for his lack of foot speed. But I really do think if it's not Aiyuk, I think it has to be a tackle. Even if you want to trade back and get some more picks and then get your tackle, I feel like a non-Brandon Aiyuk, that's your best case scenarios. You get more picks, you get your tackle, and then you get Javon in the third, or another receiver in the second. If you can finagle that. Actually, that wouldn't make sense, but
no, I'm kind of with you. I think that order of preference, if you will, would be Aiyuk, a trade back, and then the tackle. Because look, the tackles kind of went towards the end there. You talk about Guyton and Jordan Morgan going, and they're still. I mean, Kingsley and Patrick Paul are sort of that next level. 34, at least for Paul, feels like a reach. Kingsley makes a little bit more sense, and maybe not a reach for Patrick Paul.
You mentioned if he was getting first round buzz,
yeah, I guess
value. I think he was getting undervalued in the process.
If you like him, grab him, stick him at left tackle, and that's your guy for the next, half
decade. See what the beast has him as. I'll check real quick. I'll see what that is.
So I still think it's Aiyuk. And again, you talk about AD Mitchell, Lad McConkey. McConkey's not really that X. He can do it all, but he's not necessarily an X. And then AD Mitchell, I'm a bit a fan of him. I'm surprised, frankly, that he didn't go tonight. But when you look at it and you weigh your options of trying to get Aiyuk, and you level it out like we just did, you go get Aiyuk, or you just sit and take AD Mitchell, it kind of feels like such a step down. It's like, well, we should just trade back. Elliot Wolf mentioned they want more capital. And I just feel like that would be, I guess, be a move that would make more sense for the holes they want to fill, because again, you can trade back, you can still get a solid tackle, you get more picks, and like Bill Belichick, picks are, well, like every team, but everyone got so mad when it was Bill around here. Picks are currency. Picks are king, and Wolf wants more. They want to make more. Make more selections. So ultimately, we'll see where it goes.
They're in a very good spot. I just think I still think they're in a very good spot, because the receivers that are available don't really fit unless you do want to bank on AD Mitchell or you really like Keon Coleman. None of those guys in the second round are really what you need. And then the tackles, it's like you trade back. If the tackles are gone, then you can keep getting more picks, maybe get a good value for a Brandon Coleman or a Roger Rosengarten, Kingsley if he slips. I think you can really just kind of let the board come to you, which is a great place to be after you just got your quarterback. You're kind of in the driver's seat.
Right. So here's a look at what we have going forward. You talk about the position there, and the talk about, being in the driver's seat, what have you. Tomorrow, starting at 7 p.m. is the second round. We have pick 34, the second pick of the second round. Then obviously pick 68 also comes tomorrow. And then on day 3, they have 103, 137, 180, 193, and 231. So what's that? 7 picks left, 2 tomorrow. And we go from here. But like you said, Taylor, they are in a good spot, especially with Drake Maye. They're in a good spot. They have their signal caller. They have feelers out for Brandon Aiyuk. There's talent on the board, and they can move up. They can move back. They can use that 68. They can move it back. They can move forward. There are options. There are players, and they're in these good spots to fill out said holes. So before we get going, Taylor, I don't have one off the top of mind, but I'm curious. What's your bold prediction for tomorrow in rounds 2 and 3 for the Patriots?
Bold prediction.
And I completely gave you that on the spot, so I'm sorry.
Does Aiyuk count?
Sure.
I think Aiyuk has to be the bold prediction, because again, I'm looking at the board for receivers, and I'm honestly not that wowed. This is a deep receiver class, but it's not deep at X. Well, that's not fair. I think it is on day 3, but those are all developmental guys where there's no guarantee that they're going to live up to their potential. And then offensive tackle, again, I feel if you trade back and those guys are gone, then you're kind of in a weird spot. And I feel like if it's not Aiyuk, I think you kind of have to get one of those guys after a small little trade back, maybe just a couple spots. But yeah, Aiyuk has to be the bold prediction. I think that's
here's mine. They trade for San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel.
That is pretty bold.
It's
I
bold.
hope they don't do
Another
it.
one. It's going to be one of the two, I think, who ends up getting traded. And
I love Debo, but one, he's not an X. He's not a guy who wins one-on-one, and also the injuries. Like I don't know why. I'm not going to say I don't know why a team would trade for Debo. That'd be silly. He's also like a captain. Like he's clearly a very valuable player. But for a team that's probably not going to compete for at least like 2-3 years, Ayuk's still young. And if you pay him, that'll make him happy. You'll be like, yeah, I'll be part of a rebuild. If you're paying me $32 million a year, like, hell yeah, I'm on board. Especially with Jacoby, where one thing I would be worried about is with Drake early on, like missing him a lot when he's wide open. Like I could see that being frustrating for a guy who's, year alpha. But Jacoby, if Drake Maye does have that concern, he's good. Like he'll hit an open receiver. And there were a ton. I was looking at that Cleveland tape. There were a ton of high quality throws when he was with the Browns and in Alex Van Pelt's offense. So yeah, I hope it's not Debo. I really hope
it's Brandon Aiyuk. Pray on it, sleep on it. Let's go to bed. Let's figure this thing out. Let's reset. Let's rejuvenate and get ready for Patriots Day 2 of draft. So everyone who's on live right now, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. Yeah.
Or T. Higgins. Maybe.
Oh, that's a good brand. That's a good bold prediction.
I keep forgetting about him. I'm so excited about this. Aiyuk, I want more. It's like Aiyuk for me, then T. Higgins is like right here, and then Debo's here.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, right. So go get T.
Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Use the code CLNS for the first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.